Let's get serious. Last week, Speaker Pelosi told our athletes in Beijing basically to shut up. Now, Jen Psaki is saying peaceful protests, they're okay. Roll tape.
We support our athletes 100%. All athletes have the right to freely express themselves. And that is the case in Beijing at the Olympics. It is the case anywhere. They will make those choices as individuals. We certainly support the right to peaceful protest.
Yes, you do. Joe Concha joins us. Joe, Pelosi says shut up, enormous backlash. So up comes Psaki to kind of settle the waters and walk it back. What do you make of this?
Well, mixed messages coming out of the Democratic Party. Wow, that's par for the course considering what we witnessed over the past 6 months, right, with Build Back Better. Look, I don't think the Chinese, Stu, care very much about any sort of protest from any athlete because the money is coming in from American corporations like Coca-Cola, which is a leading sponsor of these games. Remember who Coca-Cola is? The same company that boycotted the All-Star game in Georgia last summer because they bought the president's lie, hook, line, and sinker on voting rights being trampled and the state embracing Jim Crow 2.0. In a related story, it's harder to vote in Chuck Schumer's New York or Joe Biden's Delaware than it is in Georgia, but that's a conversation for another time. But in the end, relatively nobody is watching, Stuart. I mean, you see viewership now for the opening ceremonies down nearly 50% when compared to the Winter Olympics just 4 years ago. Barely half the audience gone. And I think a good chunk of that has to do with resentment towards China, obviously their role with COVID, and then this virus likely being created in a lab in Wuhan, which is more and more being accepted by people even on the left. And the government lying about it has millions of people dying since then. So, yeah, it's hard to watch this and separate COVID and what China did and root for the athletes, no question.
You got it. Next one, Joe. Rumble offering Joe Rogan $100 million to bring his show to their platform. I'm not sure how this would work, Joe Concha, because would Spotify let him out of his contract? And does he get $100 million if he goes to Rumble? I guess he does, if they let him out of the contract. Should he go?
Well, maybe there's some sort of moral clause within the contract that we all have in our contracts where Spotify would have an out without having to pay him, I suppose. But look, capitalism, which we all love, Stu, coming into play here big time. That's a good thing, right? So let's say Spotify does eventually fold and part ways with Rogan. Rumble, that $100 million contract is one thing, but then Rumble's also saying we're not going to censor or remove any of your episodes in any way, shape, or form if you sign with us. But even if Rogan doesn't have a corporate entity behind him, he's got 11 million listeners per day right now. And technology being what it is, he can start his own podcast without being affiliated with any corporate entity and make boatloads of money in the process. He's that big right now. So.
Absolutely. 11 million listeners, viewers, whatever they are, every single day. Now, that's a market you can milk big time. Joe Concha?
Yeah.
I'll say it again. You're all right, young man, and I'll see you again soon. Got it?